St. Lucia, this is Open Mic, and we're now back to the second segment of our program. We got a fairly in-depth of what goes on behind the scenes in politics. And each island is different, but the end result is the same. But on that score, we want to move on to a new subject, which is the CCJ. Sir James has a lot to say about that because he just came out from a great experience, and he will highlight what happened. Sir James.
Thank you, Michael. I will give my experience and leave it for the people of St. Lucia to judge. We had an exercise in St. Vincent a few years ago on trying to change the Constitution. And I am one of the few. The only other person in my category in survival from colonialism to independence is Dr. Kennedy Simmons in St. Kitts Nevis. I went through the process from colonialism, sitting under an English governor, through statehood, and to independence. So I was being involved in the whole constitutional exercise. And I was able to point out to the people of St. Vincent at that stage. They said, oh, 30 years, it's time for us to do our own thing. And the presentation I gave to the people of St. Vincent was that when we got independence, the process only took 2 or 3 days, because the whole thing was drafted by the British and given to us. We really didn't have much experience in dealing with or writing the Constitution. But the British gave us thousands of years of history of democracy and civilization in that document. So don't think 30 years is equal to a few thousand years embodied in the experience of that Constitution. And one of the things I was not going to deal with is the abolition of appeals to the Privy Council. As Prime Minister, I noted every time you're dealing with a big international organization for investment, there is a clause on arbitration. And always they want to say, disputes to be resolved in accordance with the laws of the United Kingdom. For you to get in a big investor here in St. Lucia, they don't want anything settled under the laws of St. Lucia.
Without cutting you short, you are so right, because when Sir John Compton brought Hess to St. Lucia, that was one of the clauses Hess inserted in the contract, that if there was any arbitration, it had to be held in Geneva.
So, well, I too, I'm glad you have the experience, I have the experience.
Right.
So if we really want a lot of money and direct foreign investment, and even though we have the rights to the Privy Council, you have to work very hard to convince the investors that eventually, don't worry, the Privy Council is there. Now, in my case, I have just come through a commission of inquiry set up to look into a project. The usual thing when a new government gets in, they want to look at corruption. And they picked on a project, the Otley Hall Marina project, that had been worked out between myself and the Italian government. Now, the Italian government and foreign governments, as you know, want to export their goods and they want to export their services. So there's a principle of trade and development called use of the export credit guarantee. In the case of Italy, it was an organization called SACE. They did a project in Antigua for the Royal Antigua Hotel. They did another one in St. Kitts, and they did one with me in St. Vincent. Now, I was accused, among other things, of not doing due diligence. Was I to do due diligence on the Italian government? Was I to do due diligence on a top German bank, West LB? You know, an investor came and said, this is the source of the funding. I dealt with the foreign ministry of Italy and got the project going. we had to put in our counterpart contribution. I put in the land and the beach and the foreshore for the project. That was my contribution, not a cent from St. Vincent. And we built this fantastic marina.
Yeah, I saw it. It's incredible.
It's a big project.
Certainly, yeah.
And the project was working while I was there. We got into some difficulty with the German banks, as a result of which the contractor also lost his operation in Italy. Now everybody knows that Genoa and Columbus, etc., is a part of the shipping and traditional thing in Italy. I went there and I saw the shipyard that the man had. I said, one like this I can do with it in my country. So they set up this commission of inquiry to look into the Otley Hall project, defined as a failed project. While the thing is working, and boats can't go in there unless they book 3 months in advance.
I visited the place. I used it.
Yeah, you use it.
Certainly.
And you know that the bill is anything at least $100,000 a week.
Yeah. So,
Right?
yeah.
So here is a project defined by a new government as a failed project, earning not less than $100,000 a week. And that doesn't include the storage of yachts on the land.
Right.
Good. So they appoint a judge. And this commission of inquiry, they went ahead, they wrote me and they wanted me to appear before the inquiry. I said, what documents I have? I said, all the documents are in the Prime Minister's office. They wrote back and asked me to come. So my lawyer then wrote them and said, would you tell us what you want of Sir James, and reply within 2 weeks, because we've said all the documents are there. They never replied. The commission went on, and by 2005, election coming up, they wrote a report. A judge, a retired judge of the Eastern Caribbean, Judge Georges is his name. And you can go on the internet and find the entire case. It is Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, JCPC, case ID 2013/0067, Mitchell versus Georges. I went before, I pleaded, my lord pleaded. You wrote a report without seeing me, without hearing me, without showing me the report, and sending it to the DPP to prosecute me. I mean, even in a dog bite case, you get better judgment than that. The judge, we appealed, we went before the court. The court threw it out. I had to get permission to go to the Court of Appeal of the Eastern Caribbean, because the judge ruled that I could not appeal. So I had to get permission from the Court of Appeal to go to the Court of Appeal under Rawlins. Traveled all my entire crew, and we go up to Dominica, and Rawlins said I had a case, but he didn't throw out the thing. So he sent it back to a lower court. So I'd gone through one judge and 3 in the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal sent it back to the lower court. Went back to the lower court, and she threw it out again. So then I went to another Court of Appeal in the same OECS, and they too threw it out. And then I had to go over their heads and get permission and go to the Privy Council at great expense. When you set up these commissions of inquiry, the government hires its lawyer, paid for by the taxpayer. But who pays for me? If I didn't have an inheritance from my grandparents and land and property to sell and to take loans,
You might have been behind bars.
I would have been behind bars. Unfortunately, I had a daughter, Louise, who also studied law. She graduated from Oxford and Manchester and the Inns of Court, and she worked with the Trinidad lawyers. Teams of lawyers I had to pay. $500,000 US this case cost me. $500,000 US of my money. Go before the Privy Council. And the Privy Council throws it out. I remember at the Privy Council, Astafan was the lawyer for the government.
Okay, Mr. Astafan.
Mr.
Again,
Astafan.
same
You know the name is Lupa.
I know that name very well.
Astafan. Astafan represented the government in all the Caribbean cases, but he didn't turn up at the Privy Council.
Right.
He didn't go there. But the English lawyers representing the government, I was there, and I invited your son.
Yes, I remember that.
Alan. I said, Alan, you pass it through. You come and see how the Privy Council operates.
Yeah.
This is good experience for you.
Right.
The judge, there are 5 judges, you know.
Right.
And I sat there, and the thing is on video too, you know. You could look it up, and you could see me there. My face I never gave an expression in the Privy Council. I sat there stonewall.
Right.
But one of the judges in the Privy Council said to the lawyer representing the government, in this report, which you have written and released, there is a sentence that reads as follows: the evidence which so far has not been refuted. Let me repeat. The evidence so far, this is the sentence they quoted, which has not been refuted. She said, could you explain to us what you mean by so far? He said, my lady, that's an unfortunate statement. She said, indeed, I knew I won my case. Here it is. I have defeated 9 Caribbean judges. 9. If I didn't have the Privy Council, he said I'd be in jail. I, James Mitchell, a former Prime Minister, could not, the longest serving Prime Minister when I left, the longest serving Prime Minister could not get justice in the Caribbean. So that I leave that for the people in the Caribbean to tell me if they want to go to CCJ.
But without cutting you short, Sir James, I think the Vincentians already made up their mind because they had a referendum. And what was he told? The answer is we want to stay with the CCJ.
That's right.
So that speaks for itself. So James, this has been a very interesting session. We've just come to the end of the second segment of our program. We'll be right back.